Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. It is simply a beautiful day here on the homestead. The weather, man, we had such cold weather, and a lot of you felt that. A lot of snow and ice, and then it was just like that. It just turned right around, and so far we are having a really nice early spring here in the Ozarks. The downside is we've already been seeing some ticks out, which it's a little early for them. And I kind of thought that the really cold weather we had may have, might maybe have knocked them back a little bit, but probably not so. Today is a special day here in the homestead. My wife and children's mother, it's her birthday, and so we're going to be taking her out to eat here after a while, but I thought I'd get this video in real quick for all of you. I wanted to talk about kind of the ups and downs of living on a homestead, living out like this. And, you might call it different things, a small farm, self-sufficient living, rural, out in the country, in the boonies, whatever you want to call it. I think many times, for those of you that don't experience this lifestyle on a daily basis, you watch videos and you think, oh, that's just this perfect, blissful, wonderful land and place that these people live, and I wish I could have that. And while there are many positive things to living out like this, I do want to let you know that it's not all perfect all the time. And for those of you that are working towards living out like this, and I encourage pretty much everyone, I know everyone can't, but I encourage you to do so. I want to caution you that there are some, negatives to it, and there's some things you kind of have to prepare yourself for. I hear so many times of people that's never lived out like this, and they make the move. They get out here and they're like, wow, this is hard, or I wasn't expecting it to be like this all the time, or man, this is gross, or it's uncomfortable. There's a lot of things that people don't realize when it comes to this lifestyle. And too many times, people come out, buy a piece of land or lease a piece of land or a little farm or whatever it is, and they don't last very long because they're not prepared. They're not mentally and physically prepared for this lifestyle, and it is different. If you have spent your entire life in a city, especially a big city, it's really different out here. I mean, it's really like a whole new world for people. Much in the same way as those of us, and my listeners that have experienced this can back me up, those of us that have lived like this most or all of our lives, when we go into a big city, it's a very much a culture shock to us, how people react and behave and just how things are. So while I do encourage people to take up this lifestyle, because I believe it's the safest and most sustainable way to live, especially in the world that we live in today, you need to understand that it's not perfect out here. When I started, I mentioned ticks being out. And a lot of people are like, oh, we don't want to live there in the Ozarks, you got ticks. And not every place in the country does have ticks, and ours isn't nearly as bad as others. There are places that they're a lot worse. And they're not just crawling all over our yard. We have ways to combat that. That's why we have birds that run free during the day so they can eat them. But if you go off in the woods during the summertime, you're going to probably get a few ticks on you. And that's something that a lot of people don't realize, not just the ticks, but bugs. I've had people tell me personally, I've had people that's come out to our property that has never really been out in the country. They've pretty much lived their whole life in the city. And they come out and they're like, man, there's a lot of bugs out here. Well, why do you guys have so many bugs on your property? Why is there so many bugs out here? They're just flying around, mosquitoes and ticks and flies and bees. And man, we don't have this kind of bugs in the city. You know why? Because most all cities, especially larger ones, they spray pesticides everywhere. Okay? Any type of green spaces that a city-owned green spaces, they spray it with all kinds of stuff. They spray the roadsides with stuff. They spray city parks. People spray their lawns. There's not a lot of welcoming places for a lot of bugs in the city anymore. And a lot of people love that. Oh, it's wonderful. We don't have to deal with bugs. All we have to deal with are these harmful, deadly chemicals that we, are in our food and our water and our air that we breathe. So yeah, out here, most people don't spray. And certainly the county and the state, they don't spray anything out here. So there's a lot more bugs. There's a lot more of critters, period. Snakes, mice, uh, little rodent kind of creatures, and possums and raccoons, and, all kinds of stuff like that. And depending on where you're at in the country, you have similar type of creatures all over. Maybe you have scorpions and spiders all over the place. And a lot of people, they just freak out at that's just horrible. And it may take a little get to used to it, blah, blah, blah. And there are certainly things that you can do to lessen the amount in and around your home. But most people do these things that kind of keep them at least out of your house as much as possible, and out of the area directly around your house. But the fact is that you are living in their environment, and they're just going to exist. I mean, we have snakes out here, and that's one of the comments or questions I get a lot. People that are wanting to move here to the Ozarks. Well, speaking of bugs, I had a big old fly just land on me. What about the snakes? Don't you have venomous snakes there? Yes, we have venomous snakes here. But they don't usually bother us that much. We keep stuff cleaned up in the yard so it doesn't encourage them living around the house, and they probably are all off in the woods and stuff, and that's fine with me. I don't want to eliminate them completely from my property. We hardly ever, usually the snakes that we see around here are the non-venomous, like garter snakes, occasional black snake or king snake, which king snakes are great because they eat all of they love to eat copperheads and stuff. But we really don't see a whole lot of snakes around the house. We've got enough animals and we keep things cleared, and it's not that big a deal. And I think so many times when it comes to this and other even larger predators like bobcats and mountain lions and bears, and we have that kind of stuff here. Coyotes and wild hogs. Humans have, for reasons that I don't quite understand, I mean I do, but whatever. We've spent too many generations separating ourselves from nature. And then when we go back out into nature, so many people are just astonished that this is what nature is. And nature is filled with these things that bite us and sting us and, want to hurt us sometimes if we invade their territory or their little den. And there's ways of getting around it. Humans for eons have lived around these creatures. And most of the time have lived around them without being attacked or dying or getting gravely ill from them. Yes, it happens. But usually, if you use your brain, you learn how to avoid them, you're going to be fine. Living out like this, well, it's a lot of work. If your lifestyle in the city consists of, coming home from work and propping your feet up in front of the TV and knocking down a few, fuzzy adult beverages and that's it. Go to bed, play some video games, and all within a nice climate-controlled home. And that's what you love. When you move out like this, you're going to be in for a shock. We don't spend really hardly any time like that. Most of our time is spent out doing things outside. It's a lot of work to live this lifestyle. It's usually not the most horrible work. Sometimes it can be. But most of it's just work. It's just things to do. We're constantly, whether it's animals or gardening or preserving food or repairing things or building things. There's just always stuff to be done around here. You have to realize that when you live like this, your honey-do list, your to-do list is never going to go away. You're never going to have it all done. You're always going to have stuff that can be done around a homestead. And I like that. I like keeping busy. I don't like just sitting around doing nothing. But a lot of people nowadays, they're a little scared off from work. And I want you to know that when you move out like this, it takes work to make it work. You have to really put some effort into it to be successful with this kind of lifestyle. Other things that are not related to that, living out in the country is different because the people are different. Um, People are different in most rural parts of America, especially in the Midwest and South, and I guess, well, maybe everywhere. Um, it's a slower paced. People aren't in a big hurry. People take the time to get to know each other. Um, they care about each other. They actually care. You know, the little places that we go around here, most of the places that we go to, we know the people that work there, and they know about us. And they ask about us, and we ask about their families. You know, there's there's not a whole lot of big secrets that are kept out in the country because, well, everyone kind of knows everyone. A lot of people are related. Out here, you know, there's a lot of family, a lot of people related out here. So word gets around. I guess you could say sometimes they gossip, spread rumors, but for the most part, people are really decent, and they actually care about each other, and they're actually polite. And so if someone opening a door for you or saying yes ma'am and yes sir offends you, then it's probably not the place to live, because that's the kind of people that live out here still. You can still find that here. Uh, People that are willing to actually pull off to the side of the road and help you when you're broke down. You don't hardly find that in the big cities anymore. Um, so as much as sometimes you don't want someone knowing everything about you, um, there's that benefit to actually having an old-fashioned kind of community out in the country. Not everyone's that way, so don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that everyone that lives out here is great and nice and polite and kind, but there's still a lot of people that are. If you're used to getting a wild hunger at 9 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night for something to eat, takeout or delivery, or you really enjoy waking up in the morning and getting your fancy frou-frou coffee from some big national chain, you're most likely going to be disappointed when you move out in the country, because most of that kind of stuff doesn't exist. There is no delivery, at least out where we're at. In most places there aren't. Your little frou-frou coffee shops don't always exist unless you're living out in the country but near a big city. We're not near any big city at all. Not even close. You know, the closest big city is 2 hours away, and that's a medium-sized city. Um, the closest really big city is almost 4 hours away. So all of these little tiny small towns out here, if you want a cup of coffee in the morning outside of your home, it's either a gas station or an old-fashioned mom and pop cafe diner. You're probably going to be pretty hard to find all your little frou-frou coffee shops. They exist, but they're, well, there's another fly. They exist, but they're not real common. And as far as finding something late to eat late at night, most places, most of these little towns, they close down for the day, probably somewhere between 7:30 and 8 o'clock. That's everybody just goes home. There's not a whole lot of late night um, activities in these little small towns. So that's kind of shocking for a lot of people. Um, be prepared when you live like this to deal with just, you're going to get dirty. You're going to have dirt underneath your nails, okay? Doesn't mean you have to have it all the time. You can clean them, of course, but you're going to get dirt under your nails. You're going to be dirty. You're going to deal with mud. You're going to deal with poop, animal poop. Um, you know, your vehicles, especially if you live off a little dirt road, they're going to be dirty all the time, okay? These gravel roads around here, they only exist in two kinds of conditions. The Sahara dust storm when you drive down them, or, you know, these muddy, swampy bog because of the rain or the snow. And so your vehicles are just always dirty. Um, we clean them. In fact, this morning I took the vehicle and I got it all washed up and, you know, got it cleaned up and wiped down and everything. But I know as soon as we leave the property, it's going to be dirty again. Um, it's just something you got to deal with. There's a lot of things that are kind of negative. Um, Not a lot of big fancy grocery stores. You have to drive further to get to places. If most of these towns have small grocery stores and little shops, and little hardware stores and little farm stores. And so you try to get what you want there. You're probably going to pay a little bit more for it because, they're paying more for it. They're buying in smaller amounts and probably having to have it shipped. Their shipping costs are more expensive because they're small towns out in the middle of nowhere. You can drive to a bigger city that has more shops and stuff and probably pay a little bit less, but then you got to figure in your drive time. And with the increase in gas prices now, is it worth it or not? Or you can just have the stuff shipped to you. And which brings me up to the next thing. If you're one of these Amazon Prime users that love having things shipped to your house and you're used to having it delivered the day you order it, the day after you order it, and at the most 2 days after you order it, you need to get used to that not happening. Because even out here, Amazon 2-day delivery usually takes 4, sometimes 5 days. If you order something on Monday, you're lucky to get it the next Tuesday. Maybe, if you're really, really, really lucky, you might get it on Friday of that week. But that's just how it is. There's no Amazon Prime delivery. I know in these big cities that have specific Amazon Prime delivery, you can order something in the morning and have it at your doorstep that afternoon. Not happening out here, folks. The reason why I bring all this stuff up is I think a lot of people just don't know. I see posts of people that's first timers out here and something happened to their animal, or their animal is doing something it should normally be doing, and they're freaking out. They don't know why this is happening. If you plan on moving out like this, if you plan on having animals, livestock, chickens, whatever it is, gardening, you need to be researching and learning about it. Don't just jump into doing it and not know what you're doing, because you're going to get frustrated. It's not going to be fun for you. You're going to have multiple failures, and you could see deaths on your property of animals dying just because you weren't prepared and didn't know what to do. I don't know why people do that, move out like this and try to start this lifestyle and not have a single clue about what they're doing. Do some research. There's lots of books out there, good websites, good videos that you can watch and learn how to do this stuff before you get started. So for those of you that have a goal of living out on a little homestead and becoming more self-sufficient, start now learning how to do it. I know that there's a big difference between knowledge and actual skills, but at least get the knowledge now, and it will make your experience a lot easier. Nothing is easy out here. Gardening isn't easy. I was talking to someone the other day, and this past year was their first garden, and they said it was just awful. They didn't get really a whole lot out of it. I had to tell them that's normal. If you're gardening, just a little tip, and you're breaking fresh ground on garden, there's never been a garden there. On average, it takes about 5 years before that soil is really a good garden soil. So that means that those first 5 years, you're probably not getting the optimal harvest when it comes to, your garden production. And if you've just started and you don't really know what you're doing, you're also dealing with your just novice skills. So I don't want to discourage people from living this lifestyle, but I just do want to let you know that it's not perfect. And there is a lot of work, and there's a lot of mud, and there's a lot of dirt, there's bugs, and there's, people that know everything about you. But there's a lot of good to living out here too, and overall, I highly recommend it. All right, folks, thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.